I have watched Seaspiracy and we're going to talk about whether or not it is actually worth watching as a vegan. So hello, welcome to Vegan Beauty Girl. If you don't know me, my name's Nicole. I've been vegan now for 13, nearly 14 years, I think. So quite a long time. I went vegan when I was like 13. I just watched Seaspiracy this morning and I just want to share my thoughts on whether or not it's worth watching as a vegan. For those of you who don't know what Seaspiracy is about, like the clue is in the name, it's kind of like looking at conspiracies-ish around the sea. That actually isn't really what it is. It's a documentary about the climate crisis, about fishing, and just how everything kind of intertwines. And it just explores a lot about like sustainability and fishing. Yeah, it's quite a simple concept. I feel like just going into it, you know it's going to be very pro-vegan. It is produced by Kip Anderson. He's the guy that did What the Health. He also did Cowspiracy. So those were very pro-vegan films. I don't actually think I watched either of them. I think I was just already vegan at the time and I'm just like, I don't really need to watch pro-vegan documentaries. I'm already there. But we're gonna just explore whether or not that assumption is true when it comes to documentaries like this, and specifically here with Seaspiracy. But yeah, I have just found this one interesting. I find normally when like something like this comes out, like I remember with Game Changers, everyone was like, oh my god, you need to watch it, because that had like the famous scene about like talking about men's erectional issues connected with whether or not they eat meat, and that was pretty cool. But everyone was like, you have to watch that. Whereas with Seaspiracy, I feel like I've seen more people just be like, oh, I really need to watch that, but I haven't got around to it yet, even though we're all stuck indoors. Like no one just really wants to take on something like that, I guess, right now. I don't know what it is, but anyway, I decided I would watch it, take one for the team. I'm here to report back whether or not it is worth watching as a vegan. All in all, I would say that I'm glad that I watched it, but there definitely were some cons to the documentary which I want to go through. Yeah, I made some notes as I watched the film, so yeah, I'm just going to share some of those with you guys. So first of all, I didn't realise that the guy who was presenting the documentary, Ali, was from England. I thought it was going to be an American documentary coming into it, so that was a nice like surprise for me. And yeah, he spoke about some like the big news stories we've seen over the years, like for example the beach whale who had a lot of like plastic in its stomach, and that was just a very sad story. So it was kind of just reminding us of like the plastic problem we've already seen. It definitely goes to explore like dolphins and turtles, which are quite emotive animals, I guess. I mean, they're just favorites of the sea, right? So when you're trying to like appeal to people's compassion, it's really good that they focused on those. But what I thought was most interesting about this documentary was the look into stuff like certifications. For example, when you're buying dolphin safe tuna or whatever, it just was appalling to see what really goes into that, like what checks are going into that, or lack of, really. But it just seems like a lot of these certifications, like the dolphin care labels plus the MSC blue tick, it just seems like these certifications are in place really just to make money for big businesses rather than being independent organizations who are actually trying to certify the seas for the better. And I think the reason those things don't really exist is just that it's so hard to control and regulate the sea and enforce any sort of guidelines and standards. It's just, how can you? I think that was what was most stressful. It's the fact that two of the leading certifications for sustainability in food created from like fishing all actually had a vested interest in fishing, and then also looking into some charities and how a lot of plastic pollution charities may actually come from fishing businesses. So then they're never going to push out the narrative that we need to stop eating fish. When they come up with like their top 10 things to do to help the oceans, they say like buy sustainable fish. They don't say eat less fish or don't eat fish. They're just like buy sustainably. It's just frustrating when you see top 10 lists that are like talking about eradicate plastic straws, buy less plastic, blah blah blah, all these things, when really like the fishing industry has so much blame for the plastic waste in the oceans. There were some crazy facts that really draw it home and make you wonder like, why are we not talking more about this? Like for example, you've got the Great Pacific garbage patch that is 46% discarded fishing nets. A wild number of it was actually waste from the fishing industry rather than it being like tampons and cotton buds and all this sort of stuff. But then again, it is worth noting that this is specifically the Great Pacific garbage patch rather than like the oceans in general. I have seen obviously a lot of criticisms, as always whenever you get these like sort of pro-vegan documentaries, there are always a lot of critiques about it. Obviously it is good to watch it critically, take everything like knowing that it is going to be very skewed towards like a sort of like pro-vegan agenda, but for the most part I think it's quite clear that it is bad to eat fish, and like these problems are all encompassing. It's not just an environmental issue, it's not just a kindness issue. Like obviously it's not nice to eat fish, they are capable of feelings, they are capable of like complex social lives. It's not nice to eat fish, it's not nice to kill sentient beings for food, it's just not. But obviously that doesn't appeal to everyone, or else we'd all be like vegetarians. But it also even explores exploitation of humans and slavery and forced labor that goes on in the fishing industry. It just makes you very aware of how difficult it is to regulate the fishing industry, and when you've got such a massive industry that is so difficult to regulate, you are going to have a whole load of issues that do stem from the environment to animals to human rights. It's just currently unavoidable to be contributing to that if you eat fish. Actually, even more depressingly, even if you're not eating fish, the subsidies that go into supporting the fishing industry are just crazy. So just by paying your taxes, you are supporting this industry that is responsible for so much damage to like both the planet, animals and human life. That's just so frustrating. They actually had some wild figures. Yeah, so fishing subsidies worldwide is estimated to be like $35 billion, whereas the amount it would cost to combat world hunger is like roughly 30 billion. So if we just cut out all fishing subsidies, we would be able to eradicate world hunger with money to spare based on these estimates, which is just absolutely wild. That doesn't even include meat subsidies either, and I was literally just talking to my housemate about this last night, but it's just like so ridiculous how we still subsidize these sort of things. And it's also very frustrating whenever you're having conversations with people and they're talking about like how expensive it is to be vegan and how expensive as well it is to eat healthy, and then you realize that we're still subsidizing like meat and fish, and it's like, no wonder those things are so cheap, but we don't see the true cost of that. Just definitely one thing we could do to really help with like this climate crisis and helping push people towards a plant-based diet is like gradually decreasing those subsidies and making like healthy eating more accessible. So yeah, as a vegan, I definitely think it was a completely interesting documentary to watch. I feel like I learned a lot more about the complexities of fishing and just how integrated it is with like the damage it does to humans and the environment. And I've learned a bit more kind of about like marine ecosystems. Obviously I haven't memorized everything, but it just it made me more aware of these things. So I feel like if I were to talk to someone about why they should stop eating fish, maybe beforehand I would just be like, it's not okay to eat fish. One, it's mean, and two, it's bad for the environment, but I wouldn't really be able to delve deeper. But after watching that documentary, I feel like I'm much more equipped to have these conversations and hopefully bring up like points which will encourage people to go and watch this documentary. Another misconception I think I had, which I'm glad has kind of been put in check from watching this, is that I definitely thought like a lot of the issues was kind of like around like China, Japan, all the fishing they do, but it did go to show that there are like unsustainable fishing practices everywhere, including in Scotland, including in France. It's very easy to put the narrative out in Europe that we're not the problem. Of course we're gonna believe that, when of course we are the problem. I really feel for consumers who have been buying fish that is meant to be like kinder for all these years, who have seen like these certifications on their fish products and thought this is okay, like this is dolphin safe, and thinking like the fish they're buying is sustainable, when really these certifications have been misleading people for so long. And I think that is absolutely disgusting. It's just horrible. I hate so much when consumers who are trying to do good are being misled. It really, really angers me. It's just big businesses trying to profit off of that desire to do better in the world and for the world. Yeah, that really got my blood boiling. It was also really interesting when they delved into like the coral reefs. Like we all know coral reefs are in damage, and I've definitely seen so much around like sun cream and like what sun cream are you using, and trying to ensure that the SPFs that I use are reef safe, and like trying to really be conscious about that when I'm shopping. And I feel like we've heard a lot about this, like your SPF might be killing the oceans, but have you ever heard that it's actually overfishing that is a huge issue when it comes to our coral reefs? Because I hadn't. Like all I see is that it's our responsibility to buy the reef safe sun creams, and they've only started talking about that when they actually have formulated these sun creams to sell us. But they're not talking about overfishing. They're not saying like, oh, actually this is a big issue because we're disrupting ecosystems which are actually really supporting the health of the reef, and now we've disrupted that. That is also a con for the reefs. I'm not saying our sun cream doesn't make a difference, but also overfishing is an issue, but that's not spoken about like nearly enough. It's just so frustrating. Can we please stop protecting the fishing industry? Can we please stop protecting the meat industry, because so much of this parallels there? Can we just try and do the best for our planet, our people, and just so frustrating. And it was also really upsetting to see just the stats of how many species have declined so dramatically since the 70s. Oh, one thing that I really did not like about the documentary is the amount of harm to animals that you could see. I'm talking about like animals being kind of like harvested, animals just being killed and hurt, and it was really shit. Obviously I'm coming at this documentary as a vegan. I don't need to see this violence towards animals to feel sad for them, to know it exists, anything like that. However, it might like hit other people hard. That might be the wake-up call they need, so I understand why it's included. Just there were a lot of times where I was just like looking to the side of the screen. But yeah, it was just segments of the documentary that were like it, so at those moments I did kind of just like look the other way. It wasn't like so bad that I would have switched it off if I weren't watching it to film for you guys. I don't know, it's just so frustrating when you think about how much like we've had like this war on plastic for the sake of the oceans over the last like couple of years. Obviously it's great that we get charged on plastic bags here in the UK, that plastic straws are banned. Obviously there are some accessibility issues that come with that. There are some people who actually need these plastic straws, but for the most part, as someone who used to go out to bars a lot, pre-pandemic days, it was just very frustrating that as a go-to they would add a straw to your drink. Maybe the laws just needed to change that. The default was to not add a straw and people were welcome to like request them. I don't know, whatever. Like, my issue is that there has been so much tension on reducing our plastic input, but like just not enough talking about the consumption of fish when it comes to our oceans and our seas, because overfishing is a big part of that. And like, it is really important that we don't eat fish or eat a lot less fish. If you can't find it within yourself to give up fish, just save it for special occasions. I feel like in the UK and a lot of Western diets, a meal just does not seem complete without meat or fish. We just really need to get away from that. We need to go back to thinking of like, no, that is a special occasion treat. It does not need to be in every meal. It's not sustainable to have it in every meal. Can we please eat vegan like the majority of times? It's like, we're not asking everyone to go vegan, but it's just to bear in mind that like the acceptable rate to consume meat in like these Western worlds, for example here in the UK, it's just not sustainable. Not everyone can do that and have animals that are living happy in a farm like we're shown in children's books. It's just not possible. The demand is too big. Just save it for special occasions. I'm getting so annoyed by this, but yeah, not enough is done to protect our oceans, and I think it's just so hard to feel disconnected from it. We don't go out there, we don't see what it's like, but the documentary was very eye-opening and I do recommend watching it. It's only an hour and a half and it was really interesting. There have been criticisms and it is definitely worth going out there and looking at some of these and getting a bit more of a balanced argument. For example, Kirsty or Brown Girl Green, she did a really cool like Instagram post. It's just kind of like dipping a little bit into conversations and pros and cons around this documentary, and from what I've seen on her Instagram, she's going to be doing a podcast series to kind of like continue this conversation, delve a bit deeper and have some criticisms and speak to some experts. So I definitely recommend following her if you're interested in keeping this conversation going. I'll definitely be listening to that. I'm looking forward to learning a bit more and hearing a bit more critically about it. But yeah, I do feel like I learned a lot, especially for just like an hour and a half. I felt like it was like reasonably entertaining. I don't watch a lot of documentaries. I didn't find it like boring or anything, just a few times a tad too gory for my own tastes. And like the biggest takeaways I got from watching that is to not eat fish for a start, put a bit of pressure on your government, don't trust these certifications, really look into where certifications come from, like have they been set up by a big business that profits off of like seafood? What vested interest may they have? Also, don't visit marine parks like places like SeaWorld. I think we all learned not to do that, but yeah, don't visit those. And also I did feel like there was a message to not use too many single-use plastics. Just be mindful about your plastic consumption. It's so nice to see a documentary like that charting so high on Netflix. I think the rise in like sort of like pro-vegan documentaries the last few years have really done a lot to, you know, change people's attitudes about veganism and get people eating a lot more vegan meals, whether or not they go vegan completely or whether or not they become like an 80% vegan. I think every progress is great. And yeah, I feel like a lot of the times people have really excused fish from the narrative, like really disconnected fish from being bad the way meat is bad. Like I think people often think like, oh, it's really healthy and oh, they don't really feel, and all these misconceptions, where towards the end of the documentary they do a reasonable job of like delving a little bit into that issue, but they don't really focus too much on whether or not it's kind to eat fish, whether or not it's healthy to eat fish. It is mostly all about the environmental impact and also the impact it has on human lives. All in all, worth a watch. Keep critical, but don't eat fish, please. Fish are friends, not food. Anyway, yeah, that's the end. I'm not gonna natter on anymore. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. Let me know down below if you've watched Seaspiracy. Let me know if you were gonna watch it for this video and now aren't, or vice versa. I'd be curious. Hit subscribe if you enjoyed this video. Also give me a thumbs up, that really helps. I'm trying to hit 10,000 subs this year. That is my goal, so thank you for helping me out on this journey. Until next time, bye.